The Old Photograph. The Secret That Shattered an Empire. The Prologue. The Auction and the Forgotten Inheritance. Imagine an auction house. Not just any auction house, but the main hall at Sotheby's in New York, where the air vibrates with the expectation of fortunes being exchanged for art, jewels, and relics. On that autumn evening, among the priceless pieces, there was a peculiar lot. A dusty mahogany box containing the personal belongings of a deceased magnate, Arthur Vance, a man whose life was a complex tapestry of genius and cruelty, of charity and insatiable ambition. He built a real estate empire from scratch, a legacy of billions, but he did it with an iron fist and a heart that few dared to question. His death, though expected after a long illness, did not bring peace, but rather a feverish anticipation. The anticipation of the division of his vast fortune. Arthur Vance was no ordinary man. He was an enigma, a master manipulator who enjoyed playing with people's emotions and expectations, especially those of his own family. His fortune was vast, but his relationships were a minefield. He had 2 children, each with their own hopes and fears regarding the inheritance. David, the eldest, a shrewd and charismatic businessman who dedicated his life to pleasing his father, dreaming of taking control of the empire. And Emily, the youngest, a free-spirited artist with a generous heart who had distanced herself from the family years ago, tired of the superficiality and obsession with money that permeated the Vance estate. She sought an authentic life, dedicated to art and community, far from her father's suffocating shadow. That night, David and Emily were present at the auction, not out of interest in the items, but out of a formal obligation. The mahogany box, a minor, almost forgotten lot, was sold for a paltry sum to an anonymous collector. No one paid it much mind. But what no one knew, what not even the family lawyer knew, was that inside that box, hidden under a pile of old papers and trinkets, was a photo. An old photo, yellowed by time, that would reveal a 30-year-old secret. A secret so devastating it would destroy the millionaire family. No one saw it coming. Get ready, because this is the story of how an old photograph revealed a 30-year-old secret and destroyed a millionaire family. The heirs and their expectations. To understand the impact of the old photograph, it is crucial to understand who Arthur Vance's heirs were and what each expected from his will. Arthur's fortune was not just money, it was power, status, a legacy that could shape the future of anyone who possessed it. David Vance. The eldest, David, was a mirror image of his father's ambition, but with a layer of polish and charm that Arthur never possessed. From an early age, he was groomed for business, sitting in on board meetings before he even finished college. He was Arthur's favorite, the one he trusted with the reins of his most complex operations. David saw the inheritance as his by right, the recognition of years of loyalty and hard work. He dreamed of expanding the Vance empire, taking it to new heights, and would not tolerate anything or anyone standing in his way. His eyes, though filled with sadness at his father's death, gleamed with the expectation of even greater power. Emily Vance. The youngest, Emily, was the opposite of David and her father. A free-spirited artist, she found her refuge in painting and music. She was a sensitive soul, but her passion was far from the corporate world. Arthur had always considered her a disappointment, a waste of potential. Emily, in turn, saw the family fortune as a burden, a source of conflict and corruption. She hoped for a modest sum that would allow her to fund her social projects and live a quiet life, far from the shadow of the Vance empire. Her presence at the auction was more out of obligation than interest, but a part of her hoped her father, in his final act, might have recognized her worth in some way. Each of them, with their own histories, their own ambitions, and their own resentments, was about to have their expectations turned upside down. Arthur Vance's will was not just a legal document. It was one last game, one final manipulation, designed to expose the true nature of his family. The unexpected discovery. The photo and the first shock. Days after the auction, the anonymous collector, an amateur historian named Mr. Peterson, began to catalog the items from the mahogany box. Among unimportant documents and trinkets, he found a photo. An old black and white photograph, yellowed by time with worn edges. In it, a young, smiling Arthur Vance stood next to an unknown woman, equally young and radiant. But what caught Mr. Peterson's attention was the baby in the woman's arms. A baby who had the unmistakable eyes of Arthur Vance. And the date on the back of the photo, May 15, 1965, 30 years before David's birth. Mr. Peterson, a meticulous man with a nose for historical mysteries, sensed there was more to it. He began to investigate. The woman in the photo was Sarah Miller, an art student who had worked for Arthur Vance in his early years, before he became the magnate everyone knew. She had mysteriously disappeared shortly after the date on the photo, and her name was never mentioned again in Arthur Vance's circles. With the help of old records and obituaries, Mr. Peterson discovered that Sarah Miller had died in a car accident years later, but the baby had been given to an orphanage and later adopted by a modest family in the countryside. The baby's name was Daniel, and he was Arthur Vance's firstborn son, a secret the magnate had kept his entire life. Mr. Peterson, sensing the importance of his discovery, tried to contact the Vance family. David initially dismissed the story as a hoax, an attempt at extortion. Emily, however, felt a pang of curiosity. She always knew her father was a man of secrets, but a hidden son, that was something new. With Mr. Peterson's insistence and Emily's growing curiosity, David finally agreed to meet with the historian. Mr. Peterson presented the photo, the documents proving Sarah Miller's identity, and the orphanage records. David, the cold and calculating businessman, felt his world crumble. The photo was not just an image, it was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode and destroy his family's legacy. The inconvenient truth. Arthur Vance's past. The revelation of the photo and Daniel's existence forced David and Emily to confront their father's dark past. They delved into the family archives, searching for any clue, any mention of Sarah Miller or a secret son. What they discovered was a web of lies and manipulations that spanned decades. Arthur Vance, in his youth, was an ambitious man but without resources. He had fallen in love with Sarah Miller, a free-spirited and kind-hearted woman. They had a secret romance and Sarah became pregnant. But Arthur's family, a traditional and conservative lineage, would not accept an illegitimate child. To protect his reputation and ensure his social ascent, Arthur was forced to abandon Sarah and the baby. He married David and Emily's mother, a woman from a good family with a fortune, and built his empire on the ruins of his first love. Sarah Miller, for her part, was silenced. She was sent away to give birth in secret, and the baby was given up for adoption. Arthur, however, never forgot her. He helped her financially, anonymously, and kept an eye on Daniel, ensuring he had a good education and a decent life. But he never had the courage to acknowledge him as his son. Sarah's diary, found among Mr. Peterson's belongings, revealed the pain and suffering of a mother who was forced to abandon her child. Arthur's letters to Sarah, full of regret and broken promises, painted a portrait of a man torn between love and ambition. The old photograph was not just a secret, it was a testament to a lost love, a painful sacrifice, and a lie that had haunted the Vance family for 30 years. David, the ruthless businessman, felt a lump in his throat. He had grown up idolizing his father, seeing him as a model of success. Now, he saw a flawed man, a man who had built his fortune on the pain of others. Emily, the artist, felt a deep sadness for Daniel's mother, a woman who had been erased from the family's history. The revelation of the secret not only destroyed their father's image but also shook the foundations of their own identities. The search for Daniel. the lost brother. With the truth exposed, David and Emily faced a dilemma: what to do with this information? Ignore it and keep their father's secret, or seek out Daniel and confront the truth? Emily, with her moral compass, insisted they should find their brother. David, though reluctant, knew that the truth, once revealed, could not be hidden forever. With Mr. Peterson's help, they began the search for Daniel. The task was not easy. Daniel had changed his name, seeking anonymity. But David, with his business investigation skills, and Emily, with her intuition and her network of contacts in artistic communities, worked together in a way they never had before. They followed leads, interviewed people, and slowly, a picture of Daniel began to form. They discovered that Daniel had become a history professor at a small university town, a simple and honest man who lived a modest but happy life. He was known in his community for his passion for history and his skill in storytelling. He had no idea of his true origin, nor of the fortune his biological family possessed. He had grown up in a loving but humble home and had never wanted for anything. The search for Daniel took them to places they would never have visited, to people they would never have met. They saw a side of life that was completely different from their world of luxury and privilege. David, the ruthless businessman, found himself helping out in a local library, learning about the importance of history and truth. Emily, the artist, found inspiration in the rural landscapes and the simplicity of Daniel's life. The journey to find their brother was, indeed, uniting them in an unexpected way. The meeting: truth and reconciliation. The meeting with Daniel was a moment of restrained emotion. They found him in his classroom, explaining the history of the American Civil War to his students. David, always direct, was the first to speak, introducing himself and explaining the reason for their visit. Daniel, initially suspicious, listened to the story with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Emily, with her sensitivity, handed him the old photograph and his biological mother's diary. As he saw the photo of his biological parents, and as he read his mother's words, the truth began to sink in. Tears came to Daniel's eyes. Not tears of anger or resentment, but of a deep emotion. He had grown up without knowing his true origin, but he had always felt a void, a missing piece in his personal puzzle. The story of his mother, the woman who loved him and was forced to part with him, touched his heart. He felt no anger toward Arthur, only an understanding of his father's complexity. And he felt no anger toward David and Emily, only surprise at the existence of siblings he never knew he had. David, for the first time, showed vulnerability. He apologized for his arrogance and his blindness. He explained the pressure Arthur had put on him, the constant need to prove his worth. Emily, in turn, hugged Daniel, feeling an instant connection with the brother she never knew. That hug sealed a new beginning for them. The anger and the dispute over the inheritance were replaced by a bond of blood and mutual understanding. Daniel, for his part, showed no interest in the Vance fortune. His simple, honest life was what he valued. He accepted the existence of his siblings but made it clear he did not want to be involved in the family business. He asked for only one thing: the opportunity to know more about his biological mother, to read her diaries, to understand the woman who had brought him into the world. David and Emily promised to share everything and more. They promised him a family that, though imperfect, was finally coming together. The reconstruction, a new legacy. The return to the Vance estate was different. The tension, the greed, was gone. There was a new atmosphere of respect and understanding. David, transformed by the journey and the discovery of Daniel, began to reevaluate his priorities. He realized that true wealth was not just in money, but in human connections, in family. He began to delegate more responsibilities in the business, seeking a balance between his professional and personal life. He became a more present brother to Emily and a mentor to Daniel, who, though he didn't want the fortune, accepted David's help to expand his school and create a scholarship program for students in need. Emily, in turn, found a new purpose. She used her share of the inheritance to fund social and artistic projects in her community, and also to create a foundation in her biological mother's name, Sarah Miller, dedicated to supporting artists and preserving her mother's memory. She and Daniel spent hours together, reading Sarah's diaries, discovering the incredible woman she was, and finding inspiration in her life. Mr. Peterson, the historian, observed the transformation of the Vance family with quiet satisfaction. He had witnessed generations of disputes and secrets, and now, finally, he saw a chance for redemption. He helped David and Emily restructure the inheritance, ensuring that Daniel was legally recognized as an heir, even if he didn't want the fortune. The Vance estate, once a symbol of coldness and greed, began to transform. Emily and Daniel created an art studio and a library on its grounds, bringing life and creativity to the place. David, though still focused on business, began to see the mansion not as a burden, but as a home, a place where his family, now expanded and united, could finally find peace. Arthur's legacy, a late redemption. With the siblings united, the figure of Arthur Vance began to be re-evaluated. Sarah's diary and the letters revealed a side of Arthur they never knew, a passionate young man, a man who was forced to make difficult choices to protect his family and his legacy. They understood that the secret of Daniel was not an act of cruelty, but a desperate attempt by Arthur to protect his son from a scandal that could have destroyed his reputation and, consequently, the fortune he was building for his children. They discovered that Arthur had faced threats from powerful business rivals who could have used Daniel's existence to blackmail him and destroy his company. He had made a painful choice, sacrificing his relationship with Daniel to protect his family's future. The old photograph, with its revealed secret, was not just a riddle. It was a final plea for forgiveness, an attempt by Arthur on his deathbed to reveal the truth and unite his children. David and Emily, by understanding the complexity of their father's decisions, found a new form of respect for him. They realized that Arthur, despite his questionable methods, had loved his family in his own twisted way. The inheritance, which was once a source of discord, became a symbol of unity, a legacy that they, together, could shape for the better. They decided to use the fortune not just for their own projects, but to create a foundation in Arthur Vance's name, dedicated to supporting families in conflict and promoting reconciliation. The Vance case became an example of how the truth, however painful, can be a catalyst for healing and unity. The family's story, which seemed destined for ruin by greed, found a new path, paved by understanding and fraternal love. The old photograph, which should have been the source of more discord, became the turning point, the gateway to a new era for the Vances. The epilogue. A new dawn, the Vance estate. Once a symbol of coldness and greed, now radiated a new energy. Sarah Miller's rose garden, which Arthur had kept untouched, was restored by Emily and Daniel, becoming a place of gathering and celebration for the family. The laughter of children, David's and Emily's grandchildren, echoed through the halls, a sound Arthur had never heard in his lifetime. The Vance family, now with Daniel fully integrated, was an example of resilience and redemption. David, with his strategic mind, and Emily, with his humanitarian vision, transformed the real estate empire into a model company, with ethical and sustainable practices, focused not only on profit but on the well-being of its employees and communities. Daniel, while maintaining his teaching career, became a valuable advisor to the family foundation, using his wisdom and unique perspective to help others. And so, the story of the inheritance that almost destroyed them became a legend about how love and understanding can overcome greed and resentment. What they found in the old photograph was not gold or jewels, but a brother, a history, and an unbreakable bond that united them forever. The truth, however much it hurts, sets you free. And in the case of the Vances, it also united them, transforming destruction into redemption. If you know a family story that was divided by secrets but united by the truth, or if you yourself have found an unexpected bond in your life, share your experience in the comments. We believe every story has the power to inspire and transform. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will surprise you and make you reflect on the true meaning of family, legacy, and the unshakable power of love.